here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we've got Colleen on. She's going to kind of answer some questions. I'm going to throw some questions at her that I've gotten from coaches and sponsors, and she's going to be able to help us out a little bit and maybe shed some light on a few things to make sure we understand some of the important stuff. Colleen, do you want to just start off by kind of giving an overview of what's going on and the county in general, and then maybe some things that you're seeing currently inside the county and with COVID?
Sure. Currently, we are seeing a pretty significant decrease in COVID cases in our community, as well as positivity rates. So a pretty decent decline. There's also been a decline in testing. So we're kind of closely monitoring that to see how we proceed through our flu season, as we kind of expect disease prevalence to increase throughout the spring. So we'll continue to monitor that and see how that goes. If you all are aware of our site, we have finneycounty.org // COVID hub. You can go there and look at any statistics and current numbers for our site. So we are down to 135 positives per week, which in the height of things when everything went remote, we were at our highest caseload a week of 489 positives. So, roughly 4 times higher than what our current rates are. So that's good to see a gradual decrease. The whole state has seen a pretty significant decrease in COVID cases, which is promising. However, we're unsure of how long that will continue. Expectation is that there were potentially a lot of gatherings over the holiday season and a lot of families together, and generally you're just going to see transmission in those types of instances, but looking promising so far. So happy to have kids back in school starting tomorrow. And also, by the way, thanks for all that you do and all the work that you all have been putting in this year. I know this has been a very unprecedented year as well.
Well, thank you, Colleen. So one of the things that we've talked about while we're in level 5, or if we're in level 5, or if we're in level 6, where we're not seeing kids on a daily basis for them to do their screener at the beginning of the school day, can you kind of talk to us about the importance of kids being truthful in that screener?
Sure. So, of course, symptom checking kids, very important to see if they have any symptoms going on, and then also having that established relationship of trust with your students and your athletes. Any type of symptoms, COVID-19, we've seen it spread fairly easy. And of course, we don't want to see it spread throughout a team, as it has done, it seems, on several occasions. So students being able to accurately report but also understand all of the symptoms of COVID is pretty significant in that success. We have talked extensively with positives or with students, and there's kind of this misconception that COVID-19 is still shortness of breath, cough, and fever. It has, of course, presented with many more symptoms than that now. So we see anything from muscle aches, fatigue, joint pain, back pain, chest pain, still the shortness of breath, cough, and headache, sore throat, fatigue, sinus congestion. So we've seen allergy-like symptoms, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. I'm trying to think of what else. So it's basically every symptom out there.
Loss of smell and taste.
Yes, sorry, loss of taste and smell. Thank you. Basically a dead ringer for COVID-19 at this point is if, somebody's reporting loss of taste and smell, it seems that more than likely they are positive. So I think I hit all of the symptoms. So it's good to know all of the symptoms of COVID-19 to screen people for those and make sure that students understand that, we want them to be in school. We want them to be able to play sports and have as normal of a year during a pandemic as possible. But them accurately reporting or staying home if they feel ill is vitally important in this success.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate that talking to your kids about being truthful, because we don't want one sick kid to end up shutting an entire team down, an entire band down, an entire group down. If they're truthful, yeah, we're going to be without, right now, Kip Nichols is without a couple bowlers, but it's better to be without a couple bowlers right now than all of a sudden we're shutting the team down for 14 days and, maybe it's the end of a season and you're not going to regional bowling, or you're not participating in a regional activity or state activity. So getting our kids to understand the team aspect of all of this, yes, it's tough on one person, but it's better, for us to hold that kid out and do that responsibly, and for them to accept that responsibility than it is, to take an entire team or an entire group out. And getting our kids to understand that and be truthful about that is important.
And we don't necessarily recommend a shutting down of a team after one positive. It's typically looking at that one positive, and then if you have several other symptomatics or other recently confirmed positives on a team, and we can't really rule out that there is transmission or positives within the homes, then that's when we're looking at transmission happening at practices or after hours, to then say, hey, there's a greater risk that that's going to spread throughout the team. So then you quarantine the team just so it won't spread more.
Yeah. And Colleen and her group at the Finney County Health Department, I will tell you guys, they've been on our side as far as quarantining teams. We we haven't had quarantine teams unless it really had to happen. She's worked with us, her and the Finney County Health Department. They've been extra diligent in working with our teams and contact tracing through our teams to make sure that everything, has all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. You guys doing your screeners, when you do your screeners, if you have a kid that says yes to any of those screening questions, as a coach or sponsor, it is not, we're not the medical professionals. We send that on to the nurse. We tell the student, hey, you're going home for the day. You need to go get cleared by a school nurse. And if the school nurse clears them to come back to activities, then they can come back. A lot of times, that may happen that day. You may have a kid with a runny nose. They go to the school nurse and the school nurse says, oh, they're fine. It's just this one symptom, and they're able to go back. Colleen, do you want to talk about real quick the quarantining process? I know there's some confusion on whether we're a 14-day quarantine, a 7-day quarantine, or 21-day quarantine.
Sure. So CDC released the shortened quarantine, and then each county had the ability to either agree or disagree with that shortened quarantine. Here in Finney County, we are working to get a few ducks in a row before we release and start doing the modified or shortened quarantine periods. So stay tuned for that. We are still doing on a positive must quarantine for 10 days from symptom onset. If they are reporting that they are asymptomatic, then it's 10 days from the day that they tested. If they are a close contact to a positive, it's 14 days from last contact with the positive. And household situations where the positive does not isolate away from the rest of the family, then it's 14 days from the positive symptom improvement date or symptom resolvement date. So sometimes you'll see those longer quarantines on household contacts to positives because of that. But we are still doing the 10 days for symptomatic, 14 days for close contacts of positives. Does that make sense?
Yep, it makes sense to me. And guys, understand even if there are places going to the 7-day quarantine, they're not saying that those people are not capable of being symptomatic. It's just a risk versus reward type situation. They're increasing the amount of risk they're willing to take for the reward of it only being a 7-day. Those positives can still happen after that 7-day period. And maybe Colleen, you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So what you look at is there's a potential of 14 days after contact with the positive to develop symptoms because of the long incubation period of COVID-19. So it's more often that those symptoms do arise within the first 7 days. However, there's still a possibility of arising after that. So basically, the shortened quarantine promotes that testing within that 7 days. Of course, if you're a close contact to a positive and you become symptomatic, test, because that's going to also change your quarantine period, because then you'll start that 10 days from your onset of symptoms. So there's a variety of situations that, kind of impact that quarantine. But we are kind of considering a slight modification of that quarantine, where there are possibilities for people to be released from quarantine on day 10 without even testing. And we don't really recommend that. So just depending on how this all rolls out, we'll have some news releases. I'll be sure to share that with you, Drew, to kind of pass on if that's something that we adopt as a county.
Perfect, thank you. So moving on from that a little bit, remember, while we're in level 4, every single student of a first hour should be filling out the screener, whether there's, we haven't decided whether, from what I understand, they haven't made a decision on whether that screener for the students will be the Skyward screener or the Google screener. Guys, it's imperative that we make sure these kids are filling out that screener. I know there's a lot of teachers that don't make their kids fill out the screener, don't go around and make sure they're checking to fill it out. We have teachers that are concerned about coming back to school but didn't make their kids fill out the screener. So make sure we're getting that screener filled out with those first hour students. Make sure that if you're a teacher here at the high school or you guys at the middle school, make sure your first hours are getting that done and taken care of. In level 5 and 6, we're doing that screener at practice or before any competition. So make sure you're going through, and those of you that are doing it here at the high school have been doing it. You have the paper copy. I've sent you the paper copy. Get that filled out. Get that copy to the school nurse when we're not in school on those days, or if we're in level 5 as a school or district, make sure you're getting those students every single day, getting those students screened daily. Colleen, one change that we've made is we're not allowing Gator masks. I'll go ahead and let you explain the issues that arise inside with Gator masks.
There have been a couple of studies that have been published of the material of Gator style masks, and they're usually a polyester blend. That polyester blend has a wider weave of fabric, and what it's been shown is to actually break up the particles and your droplets even more. And so it aerosolizes the droplets, and basically they spread faster in air. So there's actually been an increase of transmission that have been traced to Gator style masks. Also looking at the fact that typically they're, a 1-layer fabric. So number 1 recommended is our N95s. Of course, those are made for medical professionals. The second are your surgical masks, so such as these. And then third is a 3-layer 100% cotton weave mask, similar to this is kind of a new one that the county just did. So 100% cotton, and then they have like a filter on the inside too, a removable filter that you can clean. Those are the third recommendation of best to decrease the transmission of COVID-19.
Perfect. One thing that we're going to deal with, obviously, with our activities is transportation. Can you kind of talk through some best practices as far as transportation of these kids as far as them being involved and maybe going on these trips, what our coaches can be doing and sponsors can be doing to better help that process?
Sure. So generalized spacing of students, of course, wearing their masks, increased ventilation. So a window cracked or air on. That increased airflow helps decrease the possibility of transmission within a bus. If you are able to split into smaller vehicles, if that's available, or more buses to split into smaller vehicles so that you don't have large groups of kids in close quarters. If there are household siblings or other things in that travel that can sit on the same seat together, then that's something to keep in mind as well. More frequent stops to just take a break and get air flow throughout the bus. So basically any way that you can diminish the prolonged close interaction in an enclosed area, that continued interaction usually impacts transmission. Of course, wearing masks too on bus rides.
Yeah, and remember, I know I've talked to the high school coaches about this quite a bit. When we're taking those bus trips, avoid the Walmarts, avoid those places that have a high concentration of people. And if you need to stop to go to the bathroom on a long trip, if you need a place to stop, guys, the best place to stop is at somebody else's school. Every athletic director that I've talked to has allowed us into their concession stand / football facilities to a clean restroom that is large that we can get into. And we know that for sure it's been cleaned. We know we're avoiding people. We know we're avoiding places of mass gatherings like a Walmart where people may not be wearing those masks. So if you need help with any of that, finding places to stop, you know, I know in the fall, you know, whatever sport it was, a lot of people came and asked me to make phone calls to specific schools. If we're going to stop at Great Bend, can you call the AD at Great Bend and get us into their locker room so that we have more space to get out and go to the bathroom? So make sure you're doing that and avoiding the Walmarts, avoiding the McDonald's and in those small bathrooms and busy facilities. We've got, Colleen, we've also got on our spring coaches. So we have our winter and our spring coaches. Can you kind of, so everybody knows, explain, and they've been beat in the face with it, but just explain the difference between inside and outside, the worry about the transmission inside compared to the transmission outside as we move into our winter sports and then eventually back into our outside spring sports.
Sure. A lot of it is just direct airflow. So the possibility of breaking up droplets more outside versus inside, where the air has a greater chance of becoming stagnant and droplets just hanging out in the air around athletes. So really thinking about the possibility of, you know, in an enclosed space, you know, there's only so much air to go around and move, versus outdoors, those droplets are dispelled pretty quickly. Of course, recommendations are still to wear masks and still socially distance even outside. However, because of airflow, it does kind of diminish some of the possibilities of transmission. So there's a much less of a possibility of transmission outside versus indoors. Close areas, lack of airflow have been believed to impact a lot of this.
One of the last issues or topics that I had brought to me by any of our coaches or sponsors, well, one of the last, they were asking about vaccines and if you knew anything about timelines or anything like that. Maybe if you can spread any information to these guys so they have an understanding.
Sure. So far our number of vaccines have been pretty minimal. We've only received 150 doses to focus on healthcare personnel and do that administration first wave. As we move through this, in the second phase of administration, we will open up to 75 and older and medically compromised, and then in that next tier it's 65 and older and medically compromised. The communication so far from the state is the expectation that wider availability late spring and then open availability this summer. of course, teachers are also in this second phase. So as we begin moving through our plan and begin receiving more vaccines, we'll continue putting out the news releases that say who we're vaccinating and who's qualifying for those. I will partner with the school district to make sure to get that communication to all of you teachers as well that would like the COVID vaccine, so that you are available to schedule with us. Currently, we're anticipating at that point probably larger drive-through or drive-up possibilities and remote locations and or on-site locations. So kind of a variety of modalities to ensure vaccination around our community.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns from anybody? Colleen, do you have anything else you want to add to make sure our coaches and sponsors really focus on? I mean, wash your hands, watch your distance, and wear a face covering. Obviously, will continue to be the motto of the year, it seems like. So, is there anything else that you want to add to any of this?
Not that I can think of. So I thought that was some great questions that you guys all kind of came up with for us to go over. But of course, you guys know your students, your athletes the best. So keep your eyes out for any unusual fatigue or even minor symptoms to kind of talk to them. We've seen a variety of situations that have happened in our population here. And have kind of noticed too that some people just kind of get new symptoms each day as they kind of go through COVID-19, and some people have just very minimal symptoms. So we see a wide range of very symptomatic to minimally symptomatic. So thank you, and hope you guys have a great semester, and thanks for all your hard work.
Well, thanks a ton. And I'll reiterate that, when you guys are inside your practices, whether it's wrestling practice or basketball practice or choir practice and band practice, you're going to have the best understanding of what you're looking for within those kids. If all of a sudden a kid is struggling, to blow a horn or to get a note or to finish a suicide that normally wouldn't be struggling, that's what you need to be looking for. So you guys know your kids best and do what you can to make sure we're keeping all of these kids safe. Reiterate to them, be truthful. We want, the greater good of the team is more important than any one individual. So make sure your kids understand that yeah, we're going to sit them out, but we'd rather sit one person out than an entire team out. Reiterate that to them, because that's eventually where it ends up if we don't get our hands around it quickly. It ends up with the whole team being out as opposed to just one individual being out. So, Colleen, thanks a ton for everything you're doing. We know you're in a tough spot there at the Finney County Health Department with all of this, and it's you have a thankless job. So we do appreciate you working with us in the district and everything you've done for me and everything you've done for our district and our kids. So thanks a ton for everything. If you guys have any questions, shoot me an email. I meet with Colleen every Monday. Shoot me an email and I'll get those questions to her, and she's quick to respond, so she'll give me answers, and we can get any questions you guys may have answered and in a timely fashion. So, okay, anything else? Anything for the good of the cause?
Coach Stone, in the proposed revisions document, it says that the coaches and sponsors need to complete the NFHS COVID-19 online course to file certifications. Do we have to create an NFHS login for it? Do we have to create an account for it?
Yes, you do. And I'm going to meet with all of you guys separately, all the activity people. Mr. Singh and I are going to meet with you guys separately, and we'll talk about that specifically.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Tone.
Yes.
Do you know the answer to Speck's question that he put in the comments, or no?
Which question's that?
It was the one he was wondering if teachers will be required to get this vaccine. I was kind of wondering the same thing.
I don't think that we can require anybody to take the vaccine, to be quite honest with you, but that's me as just some random guy answering the question and not Dr. Carlin. That's a Dr. Carlin question. I really have zero idea on that answer, but I would assume the answer is going to be we can't require anybody to take it. I don't know though. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
I probably shouldn't even answer that way.
I haven't even seen anything nationally about employers requiring it, so I'm kind of curious about that too, because there's other vaccines in like healthcare fields that are required, but so far I haven't seen hospitals here even locally requiring it. So
yeah. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'm going to let you guys go for the day. Colleen, thanks again to you and the County Health Department for everything. And everybody, welcome back to school, and let's get back to our activities and get back to the classroom and make a good run at this second semester. Well, the end of the first and beginning of the second. So thanks for everything, guys.
thanks. Bye.
Bye.